got a really deep wrestling culture at Grant. And I think we've got, 5 alumni on staff with us, which is awesome, all from different eras of the program, which is really cool. And those guys do an exceptional job investing in our kids. And I think, just being at a high school that cares about wrestling is really cool. And just talking to other coaches, you hear some different stories of, this, that, and the other. Wrestling doesn't, and at Grant, wrestling matters.
Mark Jolcover, welcome to the podcast. Head coach, Grant High School. How you doing today?
Good. We're in the heart of the season, so I'm excited about what we've got going on, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you guys have a lot going on. But before we get in there, I just want to remind the listeners and the viewers a little bit about you, Mark Jolcover. So you graduated in 2012 from Stevenson High School, correct?
Yep. Yeah, Stevenson High School. My head coach was Shane Cook there. He's still the head coach there. Amazing wrestling coach, but even better leader of men, and has built a really strong program over at Stevenson, and had a huge impact on my life in my time there.
Yeah, I've always seen him from afar. Seemed like a really cool guy. I'm gonna actually probably have to have you make a connection so I can get him on the
Yeah,
podcast.
no, you've got to have him on. He's the man. Has become a great friend of mine then later in life, which is really cool to have that relationship still. But just does a great job at Stevenson. Has built a unbelievable program, highly respected coach throughout the Illinois wrestling community, and what he's done, and the program that he's built. But then just how that those kids represent themselves and represent their program, and the way that he's guided young men and built them up. It's pretty exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely. And so after that, you went on to Northern Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your experience up there. How did you?
Yeah,
Was Coach Schwab there, right?
Coach Schwab was. So it was his, I believe his second or third year was my freshman year. I think his second year as head coach was my freshman year, if I'm correct with that. But same thing, right? Like, I mean, he's what you see is what you get, right? I know he's had a lot of big coverage in the last few years. Obviously, winning National Coach of the Year and all the media stuff that UNI Wrestling does a great job, and his wife does a great job putting out a lot of their media stuff. And so kind of the public eye has gotten to see what we have seen behind the scenes for so many years, which is pretty cool. But he's as advertised. What you see is what you get, and it's not just in front of the camera. It's behind the scenes of. He would do anything at any time for any of his athletes, no matter what type of level they were at, right? So I was a walk-on. I loved wrestling and just wanted to be a part of it. Wrestled behind a kid that was a couple-time All-American. So I knew I wasn't really going to get in the lineup at all, but wrestled in any open that was an opportunity to wrestle in, and tried to keep getting better and learn. And he invested just as much time into me as he did to any other kid in the program. And so that really was a great thing that I learned, right, as an athlete, that tried to be applicable as a coach, right? It's easy for guys to get stuck in that mode where they only invest in their best kids, right? And you see that a lot, where you see a high schooler, they got 2 or 3 really good kids, but can they build a team? And his mindset was, we're 1 to 35. And every single kid in our program matters. And if, the 35th best kid on the team is getting better, well, he's going to push the 34th and 33rd and so on. And just that investment, I never felt like I was an afterthought in the program, even being a walk-on or a guy that was just in the room. I never felt that way. I felt like just as much time that was invested in me was invested in other guys. And I think that's, they're really known for like taking middle of the road kids and developing them. I think that's probably why, because they invest in those kids just as much as they would anyone else. If you show up, you want to work hard, you want to live the right way, and do the right things, they're going to put time into you, and they get the right types of kids in that program. And so I owe a lot to him, and still have a really, great relationship with him. And I know that a lot of athletes that come through that program still maintain, great relationship with him, 5-10 years down the line, which is what the sport's all about, right? It's you want to win matches, you want to win titles and bring home trophies, and all that's really exciting and important to pursue success. But at the end of the day, the memories and the relationships that you hold kind of carry on. And so I think he really set that standard. for the program, and it's really impacted me in a lot of ways. But to have that relationship where 10 years down the line, I'm still talking to him, once or twice a month on the phone. And when I go out there, he'll make sure to grab lunch with me and spend time with me, or stay at his house for a couple nights or whatever it is. That relationship's still really, really strong. And I know that that's not just me that has that, but anyone that's come through his program, he's got really strong relationships with.
Well, that's refreshing to hear because, yeah, at the Division 1 level, it is sometimes what you're doing for me lately, and that's about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and in that NIL era, right? They've done a really nice job where it's like a school with not the resources that maybe others have. They still are producing really high end talent, and I think getting guys to believe in the mission and values of the program, is greater than just what can you do for me in this moment. And I think you see it where they don't really have a lot of guys that leave, and you see it kind of on the top end with the guy like Keckeisen, where I'm sure he could have went to a lot of other places and gotten, paid a lot of money, and no one would have slighted him for it. But, wanting to stay there and finish what he started, I think is, a testament to what the program is.
Yeah. And that's just such a great base of like a coach relationship type thing to come into high school wrestling, because high school wrestling, we get really excited about, winning championships and getting to the highest level of sport. But at the end of the day, like you're coaching at a public school and you have 100, like 100 kids on the team. So not all of those kids get to go on to the next level. So how do you develop, like you said, build relationships with them and help them get the most out of themselves is something that isn't just based on wins and losses. You really got to do the work of, building relationships with people. So that's a great base to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm thankful that it's not just me that believes in that mission. My staff's behind it. We've got a really great staff, and my assistant coaches do a great job, of, hey, we realize that wrestling means something different for every kid, right? And, we've got some really high level kids in our program right now that, are going to go on to wrestle in college. And we have some kids that, are just a part of the team, and their goal might be way different, and every kid's goal is different, right? And so being able to figure out what kids are getting out of this program. And I mean, we had a kid in our program last year, and just he wrestled for just his senior year, and teachers in our school knew, hey, this kid, it's important for this kid to learn how to finish something, and for us, right, like that was his version of a state title, and for some kids it's to win the state title, but for other kids, just to finish the wrestling season is pretty tough thing for a high school kid to do, if that's their, goal. So trying to help kids where they're at and know that wrestling's really good for kids. And the more kids that we have in our program is the better. That's our mindset, because we know that wrestling helps kids. We know that it's good for kids. I know what it's done for me. I know what it's done for so many kids. And so to not have as many kids in your program, to be seclusive in any type of way just isn't our mindset, because we know that the sport's really good for kids and it teaches kids the values that they need to carry over in life, no matter what level they're doing it at. So, our job at Grant is that, right? We want wrestling to be a forefront for kids and for something that they can participate in and be a part of. And we want kids to get the most out of wrestling. We don't want wrestling to get the most out of them. And I think that's a really good mindset to go in with, and our values in the way that we operate as a program really try to support that. We want
Yeah.
to win too. Don't get me wrong. We like winning and we want to have success, right? If you don't, you're lying or doing the right thing. We want to win, but I think the pursuit of success, and pursuing something greater than yourself, the things that fall off from that are going to allow us to be successful as a program and find success.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Yeah, success follows the right things. You do the
Yeah.
right things, you have success. Going into the season, you guys are doing some winning and you're having some success, both individually as well as a
Mm-hmm.
team. So, go through a little bit of the, maybe some individual success so far with the tournaments that have come up so far, and maybe some of the team success.
Yeah, I think, last year we really broke through, right? We had kind of, I would say we knew that we had a really good group of kids, but at time our results were inconsistent. And, we went on a run at the end of the year, and our kids were wrestling really, really well and wrestling together, and ended up making it to the dual team sectional. We won the regional for the first time in 10 years at Grant, won the county for the first time in 10 years at Grant, and then the dual team sectional lost to Hersey, who ended up taking fourth in a really tight duel. And that was a great experience for our kids and kind of really motivated us. But this group of seniors that we have is a really special group. It's my first year's head coach. These guys were freshmen. So this is my first group through. I was an assistant at Grant for 2 years prior. But this group's a really special group, and we're led by, I would say our two state place winners are kind of the big names, but we've got a group of kind of cast of characters behind them that are just great leaders, great kids, great support figures. And so we're excited about this group. They've done a great job. Obviously, the two kids that I mentioned prior that are really well known in our program is Vince Jasinski and Eric Rodriguez. Vince is going on to wrestle at Northern Iowa, and Eric will go on to wrestle at Central Michigan. Eric was third in the state last year. Vince was fourth in the state last year. They're both in the top of the rankings, depending on which one. So both super high level kids, but most importantly, both kids that have just bought into the program, bought into the values of the program, bought into the process of how to do things. And I think, they've developed really well in our program. I think Vince, his best finish in the IKWF, he qualified one time and he was fourth in the IKWF as a senior. And Eric in the IKWF was 2-2 at the state tournament. And so for those guys to kind of continue to buy into the process and continue to get better and develop, that's what we believe our program's about, right? We want kids to get better at wrestling. And both those kids are a really big testament to that, of how they've grown, they've gotten better. They're absolute killers on the mat. They're fun to watch. They score points. They're exciting, in all ways. And they're just really, really, everyone's a hard worker. I think these guys do a great job putting in the extra time. They're really disciplined in their lifestyles and the way that they go about things and lead the right way for our program. So they're awesome kids to coach. They're awesome kids to have around in our program. And we're excited about, the next 7 weeks that we've got with them. And it'll be exciting and sad at the same time, right? To see those guys go to the next level. But we know they'll both do great things. And then kind of behind them in that senior group, Larry Quirk, who's been a kid in our program that has wrestled his whole life. His dad's ran our kids club for a long time, and kind of has had a mixed bag of results, but has always been just a guy that we can count on in every single way. And he's had a ton of success this year. I think he was second at the Antioch tournament, placed at the Barrington tournament for the first time. He's like 23-10 right now. And I think that's the first time maybe he's had a winning record. He's, been at times was the guy for us that was go out there and don't get pinned. And we'd throw him out against any state place winner or state champ. And he's unbelievably hard to pin. And, it's been nice to see him take a role where now he's a guy that we can count on to win big matches and duels. And, Casey Gibson's a returning state qualifier for us at 190. That's done a great job. Another kid talked about development. He started wrestling as a freshman, and qualified for the state meet as a junior. Went all in the off season, and good athlete, hardworking kid. But I like seeing development. I like seeing kids get better at wrestling. I think it's great when a kid comes in and he's a super stud and he's got every credential in the book, and that's awesome. But we want to see kids get better and kids buy into the process of the sport, because we know that's what's going to take them, long term in life, is just that development piece and being able to know, how you can be process orientated in your results.
So you just got back from the Cheesehead tournament.
Yep.
Cheesehead is, top tournament in the country, very difficult. I looked at the team results, and only Kaukauna, Wisconsin was the only sole Wisconsin team in there. And, Montini and St. Charles made the top 10 list, but nobody else. So it's a brutal tournament, very difficult. How did you guys do? And how did that go?
Yeah, I looked at the team results today. I hadn't even looked at them yet to see how we did. We were 20th as a team, which again is great improvement for us. I think the first year we went to the tournament, the way that it's structured, if you win your first match, you're in that top 16 bracket. And if you lose your first match, you're from 17 to 44 in kind of a consolation bracket, battling it out with those guys. And for us, we look at that tournament as a preview to the state tournament. We think it's tougher than the state tournament. They do an awesome job running it. If you win your first match and you're in that top 16 pool, you're wrestling against every kid is a high level state placer, or state qualifier type of kid. And it's one match after the next, after the next, after the next. So, some tournaments you go to, it's like, okay, I've got a couple, easy ones to work into it. There's no easy matches at the Cheesehead, and you're wrestling 6 or 7 or 8 matches in a row that are just barn burner matches, and the 2-day weigh-in. So it really gives us a great preview of the state tournament. So we like that, seeing that right off the bat. We had a kid a couple years ago that lost his first match, battled back, was 19th at the Cheesehead, and ended up qualifying for the state meet. So I think, for every kid, there's different goals at the Cheesehead. We had a handful of kids that had a lot of success, and I think Vince Jasinski finished third, which was our highest placer we've had there, lost to the champ, and then lost to the kid that took second. So what's cool is, like, you could lose at the Cheesehead in pool play and still have a chance to win the tournament. Just the way that it's structured. But he took third, beat a kid from Hickman that was really tough for third in overtime. And awesome to see him find success like that at a tough national tournament. Jace Glauser was eighth at the Cheesehead, won a big match against a kid versus from Tennessee, and then finished eighth in the tournament. And then Eric Rodriguez was 11th, battled back and ended up having a good tournament, winning his last 2 matches. Casey Gibson was 10th, and then we had 2 kids that battled through the consolations. Our heavyweight Johnny Williams lost his first match. He's a second-year wrestler, lost his first match, and ended up winning the consolation bracket, which was huge, and a big deal for him. And then our 26-pounder Braden Hoffman finished 21st. So I think he ended up, 5-3 on the weekend or something like that. Wrestled a ton of matches, which is what we want this time of year. Getting as many tough matches as you can, figuring out where we're at, and figuring out what we can do to continue to get better.
Yeah, that tournament's awesome because, even if you take a guy who's maybe not the national level guy, they're gonna still get a lot of matches in. And I think somebody told me something like 7. How many matches did most of your guys get?
Yeah, if you're winning matches at the Cheesehead, you can get anywhere from 6 to 8 matches. I think even some of our kids got 4 matches in 2 days, and we're out of the tournament pretty early. But just the way that it's structured, you're getting at least 3 or 4 matches. So it's a great tournament the way that it's structured, and it's great for our kids maybe that are our middle of the road guys or some of our role players and aren't that nationally level kid. And then it's great for those state and nationally level kids where they get really tested a lot. And I think it tests your toughness. It's kind of like day 3 at Fargo is like a tough guy competition. It's like, man, who's just going to be tougher at this point? I feel like the Cheesehead's a tough guy competition too. It's like, who's going to be able to, everyone's banged up, everyone's beat up, everyone's, feeling the weight pull. And, it's a tough tournament. And, it really tests high school kids, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and it keeps them active. I mean, it keeps, nobody's going up there 0-2 and then sitting out,
Yeah,
messing
for sure.
around. They've
Which
always
is
got
awesome.
they got another match to get ready for.
Yeah, which is awesome. And so we love the structure. We've been going up there for 4 years, and every year we've seen growth. Our first year we had 1 kid in that top 16. I think we had 5 or 6 kids in that top 16 bracket, which is awesome to see that growth where kids are continuing to get better and embrace the process and wrestle in the off season. And those are the things that we really value and we grade our kids on. It's easy to grade your kids on, wins and losses, and that shows a little bit, right? Your results definitely tell you something, but I think grading our kids on, how they would value themselves against themselves a year prior, or 2 weeks prior, and making sure that there's growth and that we're valuing that aspect of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the number one skill that wrestling teaches is confidence, right? It can give you
100%.
some confidence that is very important. A lot of people lack it, and wrestling teaches you confidence. It can instill it and get you to believe in yourself when nobody else is, but that's good.
Yeah, no, and when you get that confidence, you see it in kids, right? They compete a little bit differently and walk around the hallways with their chest puffed out a little bit more and their head up a little bit more. And at the same way, it can crush your confidence too pretty quickly. So it's just as much as it can build you up, it can humble you as fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you guys have coming up in the final stretch of the season?
Yeah, we'll have 2 conference duels this week against Grays Lake Central. They had a great week last week. They're a really tough team. Got some really good kids. And then we'll wrestle Wakanda on Friday night at home, which will be our senior night. Then we'll have a quad this Saturday with Conant, Libertyville, and DeKalb. And then we'll roll into the next week with our last conference duel. And then we wrestle in the Lake County tournament that next Saturday. And then we're into the regional. So it comes quick. It's like sometimes it's the season seems really long and drawn out, and then you blink your eyes and you're into the state series.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely goes by quick. So when you say the Lake County, is that the conference?
So yeah, so about I think probably 10 years ago, the conference split. It used to be North Suburban, which was Stevenson, Libertyville, Lake Forest, Warren, Waukegan, et cetera, Zion Benton. And then that was the Lake Division. The Prairie Division was Grant, Antioch, Wakanda, Lakes, and so on. And so the conference split like 10 years ago into the North Suburban and the Northern Lake County Conference. We as wrestling coaches, not me at the time, but bunch of the guys that have been there for a long time were like, we don't need to have conference tournaments for 8 teams. Let's keep the old North Suburban together and have a county tournament. So it's the Northern Lake County Conference and then the North Suburban Conference into one tournament at the end of the year. And all the coaches really like it. It's a good preview for us of the regional because a lot of those teams are in our regional, and so it gives us a good outlook of where we're at headed into the postseason, which we really enjoy.
That's cool. Yeah, out this way, it's always a challenge to change the conference and how you compete at the end of the year with that stuff. That's a county tournament with more than 8 teams seems a lot cooler.
Yeah, it's great. An 8 team tournament is almost a waste of time, right? You got kids that are getting buys to the finals, and you're wrestling 2 matches. That Lake County tournament to have 16 teams and 16 really competitive teams.
Yeah.
There's a handful of kids that are number one kids in the state, top 3, top 5 kids in the state. Nationally ranked kids. So it's a tough tournament. And we really enjoy it being there every year and competing against all the local teams and take pride in having success at that tournament as well.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah, because some of these conference tournaments are just buys, or some teams are going, they don't have a full lineup. Yeah, it's tough, but good to hear. Cool. The Lake County, I'm gonna look into it this year.
Yeah,
Um,
we host that every year, so we're gonna host it at Grant.
oh,
We
really?
get one day and 6 mats, and it's an awesome tournament. So there's a lot of good history of wrestling in the Lake County area, and a lot of absolute studs that have come out of high schools in the Lake County, and it's definitely an awesome tournament.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before I let you go, is there anything else that's top of mind, high school, college wrestling that is on that you're thinking about that you want?
Yeah, no, we're just excited, right? We're excited, for our kids and to get to this next phase in the season and the kind of final stretch here. And like I said, we got a great group of seniors, and it'll be awesome to experience the next 7 weeks with them and get to watch them, pursue their goals and dreams, and see how they respond to adversity. And we know how challenging the sport of wrestling is, and so to continue to watch our kids grow and learn and get better is what our focus is. And we know we've obviously had a really good year and have done some awesome stuff, but we also know that what happens from November to the end of January is really minimal in what our goals are. Right, our goals are geared towards the end of the season and what we're doing, and we'll continue to try to get better every day. And like I said earlier, I've got a great staff that does a great job with kids, and we've got a really deep wrestling culture at Grant, and I think we've got 5 alumni on staff with us, which is awesome, all from different eras of the program, which is really cool. And those guys do an exceptional job investing in our kids, and I think just being at a high school that cares about wrestling is really cool. And just talking to other coaches, you hear some different stories of this, that, or the other. Wrestling doesn't, and at Grant, wrestling matters. And in Fox Lake, wrestling is really important. And it helps to have a rich history. And when you've got an Olympian and a world team member that have come from your program, it's definitely helps. But I think just all the way back until the 1960s, wrestling has always mattered in Fox Lake. And you see the community comes out for duels. And someone told me before I even came here that the community of Fox Lake, they want to be good at wrestling, right? That's like a desire of theirs. And so for us as coaches and as a program and our kids to be able to provide that for the community, it really means a lot. And to be able to have some awesome home duels that we've had, and to be able to put on a show and have kids that the community can rally behind has been really special, and something we're really excited about. So it's cool to honor the history and as well of the program, but we talk about building on it and making our own history, which is pretty exciting for us as well.
Awesome. Well, Coach, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It was a good conversation. Learned a lot, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thanks, Dalton. Love what you do for the sport. And, we've got a handful of our parents that listen to the podcast, and I listen to the podcast, and we definitely enjoy it, and definitely is great coverage for the sport of wrestling, and especially the sport of wrestling in Illinois, which we know how strong it is.